Hi, Russell here. Welcome to the Reading Fabricator, and it has been a long time since I've posted, but I'm going to start this new year off with a bang. So the previous 3 years, I have struggled with reading. I've averaged probably one book a month every year for the last 3 years, but this previous holiday, I've actually sort of read like 3 books in the last 2 weeks, which for me is great. I mean, I know some people out there who read like 2-3 books a week, but I think that's quite good on my part. And so I've decided to make a challenge for myself to read one book every 2 weeks for the entire year in various page lengths as well. Some big books, some quite small books. So I'm going to discuss with you the 26 books I'll read, including 2 that I've actually already read as of the start of this year. So yeah, let's get into it. Alright, in no particular order as well, but the first one is Chuck Palahniuk's The Invention of Sound. The only Chuck book I've read is Fight Club. I also own Invisible Monsters and Choke. I hear Choke's quite good, but I'm looking forward to reading this one. This one came out not long ago, so it's probably his most recent book, so I'm looking forward to giving that one a shot. So that's The Invention of Sound. I'm just going to breeze through this because there's quite a lot to get through. The next one is Colson Whitehead's The Underground Railroad. This will be my first book by him. In fact, a lot of these authors here will be firsts for me. So yeah, there's going to be quite a few lowbrow, highbrow authors. This is being one of them. Colson Whitehead, I hear a lot about him. He's won the Pulitzer Prize twice for Nickel Boys and The Underground Railroad. So I figured, why the hell not? Let's see what all the fuss is about. Let's see if I actually agree with that, the awarding of it all. And everyone told me that Underground Railroad is the place to start. So I'm going to give that one a shot. Underground Railroad. Next one's a classic. We've got John Updike's Rabbit Run. I actually started reading this last year and I got about 40 pages into it, then I put it down. Don't know why I put it down, because I think those 40 pages were quite fantastic actually. But I've heard great things about John Updike in general as an author. He's quite well regarded. Surprisingly, it's got a very average score on Goodreads. There seems to be some people out there who really hate him, so I'm not sure why that is, but I'll see how it goes. So from what I've seen, he's got a spectacular writing style. So Rabbit Run. Fourth one is a guy I've never heard of. I actually picked this up the other day. Edouard Louis, History of Violence. This one here just took my eye straight away. He's probably the youngest author in this list of books I've curated. He's 29 years of age. He hit it quite big with a book called The End of Eddie, and then this one here. And based on the blurbs at the back and all that sort of thing, it just seems like an absolutely fascinating book. It takes place over the course of one night. Involving a sexual assault sort of thing, so some heavy stuff, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading that one there. So that's probably one of the newer books that I have, including Chuck's book. Next one is a bit of Southern Gothic literature. That is The Devil All the Time, Donald Ray Pollock. Unfortunately, I watched the movie before I even read the book. There's nothing wrong with the movie. It's a perfectly fine movie, but everyone's telling me the book is amazing. And so they're saying it's for fans of Cormac McCarthy and Flannery O'Connor, both of whom I'm quite big admirers of, including, in fact, I consider Cormac McCarthy to be the greatest living American writer. And Flannery O'Connor only just recently read A Good Man Is Hard to Find, the actual short story, which I think is one of the greatest short stories ever written. Beautifully, beautifully done. But people are saying if you're a fan of them, you will like this, so chances are I'm going to like this. The Devil All the Time. Next one is the Glamorama Bret Easton Ellis. Now this is very misleading. It doesn't look big, but this is actually 540 pages, very thin pages. So it's actually a long book. It's the longest book Bret Easton Ellis has written up until now. Although a lot of people are saying, based on what I've seen on his Instagram post, the new book that he's got coming out, the first one in over a decade, The Shards, looks like a big, thick beast. I recently finished Luna Park, and I think it's the best thing he's ever written. But something tells me I should have read Glamorama first. I've read everything else by him up to that point, including Lesson Zero, The Rules of Attraction, American Psycho, and The Informers. I don't know why I skipped Glamorama, so I should have read it first before reading Luna Park, considering Luna Park, especially the opening section of Luna Park, is everything leading up to the start of Luna Park. Very fascinating book. Definitely read Luna Park. Great book. And I've yet to read Imperial Bedrooms as well. But I'm going to continue my Bret Easton Ellis marathon, and I will finish him off. Probably Imperial Bedrooms next year, but I will get through Glamorama this year. So I'm looking forward to that one. The next one is Hunter S. Thompson. A person I greatly admire for his work in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but especially also The Rum Diary, which I thought was quite a good book, and certain essays that I've read of his, including his articles in Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail. I was going to include Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail in this list. It just barely made the cut. Well, it's not in this list, but I should have added it. Maybe if I finish all this books this year, I'll add it as a bookend to it and read it. But as it stands, we've got his sort of autobiography, Kingdom of Fear. So if it's anything, if he's based it off, even just a remote part of his life, it's going to be an absolute wild ride and outrageous. He has done some truly bizarre things. So it should be an absolute beast of a thing to read, and that should be good fun. Kingdom of Fear. Next one is another classic, Neville Shoots on the Beach. I actually quite like this cover. It's quite a good cover. Probably one of the more depressing books I have on this list here. Again, I haven't read. I haven't even seen the 1950s adaptation of it, which I hear is also quite good. So yeah, On the Beach. Next one is continuing my love of reading books written by directors. So this one here, we got David Cronenberg's Consumed. I recently finished Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by Quentin Tarantino. In fact, he'll be showing up at the end of the list because he was the first one I read at the start of this year. But I just have a fascination of reading books that are written by directors. I think they just have a certain style, specifically screenwriter directors. I'm still waiting for Paul Thomas Anderson to write his books, so I doubt that'll ever happen. But as it stands, we've got Consumed here, which, if it's anything like his work, should be, sick, twisted, and full of immorality. I'm looking forward to reading it. The next one is I think it's my first female author, so we've got Toni Morrison, Beloved, an absolutely beautiful hardcover with black page lining. The person I bought this from at the local bookshop, she said it's one of her favourite books of all time. She said it was just an absolutely astonishing read, and it really dug deep. And a lot of people have been saying that. In fact, in one of the surveys I found, it beat out Blood Meridian and Underworld as being considered the greatest book of the last 25 to 30 years. Or 1985, so I think the survey came out in like 2010, something like that, because it came out in 85. This includes an introduction by the one and only Zadie Smith, who I've also yet to read, so I do plan on getting through her work sometime, including On Beauty and I think the other one's White Teeth, the one with the tattooed dragon on the tattooed tiger on the front cover, really wicked cover. But yeah, so Toni Morrison. The next one's probably the more poppy book on the list. We've got the Matt Ruff's Lovecraft Country. Don't know why I included this, but I thought I needed something, something different. And I'm also planning on watching the TV series as well. I do like Lovecraft. I think I prefer his ideas over his actual writing style. But to see that incorporated into 1950s America during that time when you got the whole racial thing going on, I think will be a fascinating touch. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, Lovecraft Country. The next one is one of the shorter books on the list. It's like 100 and it looks thicker than it actually is, but it's actually like 130 pages with 50 pages of lyrics, and that is Touching from a Distance by Deborah Curtis, and it's all about Ian Curtis, the lead singer of Joy Division, one of my favourite bands. I've read and watched the movie Control. Control's a fabulous biography film of him as well, but I've never read anything by anyone that talks about, that has actually been connected to him. A lot of the biographers, are people that went around asking about him. This is actually written from someone that spent the most amount of time with him, so I think it will be quite an informative look into his life. So I'm really looking forward to reading that one there. It should be quite deep and affecting, so Touching from a Distance. The next one is the shortest out of everything I have here, and that is Cynthia Ozick, The Shore. David Foster Wallace called her one of the greatest living writers alongside Don DeLillo. And at the bookstore there was this and two other books. I can't remember what they're called, but The Shore was the one that I had heard of. It's also the shortest, and therefore I thought the one I should get, which should be an easier way of getting into her work. I don't want to get one of the thicker ones that she has and realise in the first 10 pages I won't like it. So I'll get something that, even if I don't like it, I'll be able to finish it at least. Hopefully I'll like it. It sounds like a harrowing story about the Nazi concentration camps. But I trust David Foster Wallace's opinion about stuff, so if she is as good as he says, then I should like it. So Cynthia Ozick. The next one, in fact, quite a few of these books coming up. I've never actually read anything by the author, so it's going to be a lot of, this is first for me. This one included Philip Roth, The Ghostwriter. Now, I owned a Philip Roth book called Sabbath Theatre, and I did start reading. I got 10 pages into it and I put it down. I realised I wasn't ready for it, or I wasn't prepared for it. Very densely written, wonderfully written, but densely written. So I figured I'd go back in time and pick something up from earlier in his career, and something shorter as well, as a way of getting into his work, to understand his work. This is apparently part of the Zuckerman series, very short book about a young writer who goes to meet a hero of his. So hopefully I'll get on board with the whole Philip Roth love train. There seems to be quite a few people out there who hold him in high esteem. So that's Philip Roth. The next one, yet another author held in high esteem, Margaret Atwood. Now, I've never been interested in her work, but I figured I should read more female authors, and she is generally considered high up there. So I wanted to give this one a shot. I think it's pronounced the Penelopeid, sort of an off take of the Odyssey, where it's about Penelope and her tale rather than Odyssey and his tale. Odysseus and his tale, and it's talking about her stories from the Underworld, basically, and it's part of a canon of books about mythology, including other books by Ali Smith and Philip Pullman. So I'm curious to read this one. I don't know if I'll like it, but if I do like it, I'll probably get on board with her and read some of her other works, including Oryx and Crake. Maybe not The Handmaid's Tale, because I didn't like the TV series, so probably I won't like the book. I don't know. But yeah, so that's Margaret Atwood. The next one is this wonderful reissue of a first edition 10th of December by George Saunders, story collection. Now here's the thing, I didn't like Lincoln the Bardo. I didn't think it was as great as everyone says it is. In fact, I must be one of the few people on the planet who thinks that. But people said don't judge him on his novel alone, judge him on his short stories, because he's one of the best short story writers of the last 40 or so years. He's considered quite fantastic, actually. And so I've picked up 10th of December. And I'm really looking forward to reading it. I really am. I read one of his short stories, not from this collection, but from another collection. I think it's called Civil War Land, and it was fantastic. So I'm on the fence with him now. So this will probably get me onto his side. Maybe I'll join the rest of the people who think he's great, including Thomas Pynchon, who wrote a blurb on the back of this one which says, an astoundingly tuned voice, graceful, dark, authentic, and funny. So George Saunders has some great admirers, people who consider him a fantastic writer. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this one, 10th of December. Next one is another book I've started but didn't finish, Malcolm Lowry's Under the Volcano. And that's because it's the first 50 pages, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of papers on people who talk about how the first 50 pages are a complete separate entity to the actual book itself, and that the first 50 pages are the hardest part of the book. If you get through that, you should be able to get through the rest of the book. I stopped after I got to the end of that first chapter because I didn't think I'd like it, but a lot are saying that no, once you finish it, then you continue through to the end of the book and you'll like it a lot more. It's just being described as a Faustian masterpiece, and I've also gonna watch the I don't know if it's John Hughes, but someone directed an adaptation of it as well. Couldn't find it anywhere. It's on YouTube, actually, of all places, so I'm going to watch it on that as well. Now, I'm not dissing the book in any way or anything like that. In terms of writing style, it's impeccably written. I just didn't like it at the time, but I'm going to give it another shot. So, Malcolm Lowry's Under the Volcano. The next one is Satan Tango. I'm not even going to bother trying to pronounce that name because I know I'm going to butcher it. Although I will learn the name when I come to reading it. But yeah, that's that name there, Satan Tango. I've heard about the 7-hour movie about it as well, and yet another short book. It's under 300 pages. But just reading about the story, it just took me completely. I have a friend who read one of his shorter books called, I think, The Last Wolf. I'm not sure if that's right, but he completely disowned it. He says it was awful and it put me off it. But then, yeah, I just came across Satan Tango, and when I read the back of it, it just really took me in. I really like it, and I love that cover as well. Absolutely brilliant cover, minimalist, and expresses a lot at the same time. I'm one of those people, unfortunately, that gets taken in by covers of books rather than what's inside it. But hopefully I'll like it just as well. So that's Satan Tango. The next one is Nico Walker's Cherry, about the opioid epidemic and his fall into addiction while in the army. I mean, check out that cover with the skull. Isn't that brilliant? It was between this and reading an SAS book on snipers. I'd recently done Lone Survivor by Marcus Luttrell, and I was going to do Chris Kyle's American Sniper, but everyone's saying that Cherry is quite a good read. So that's Nico Walker's Cherry. The next one is Fernanda Melchor's Hurricane Season, one of the most acclaimed books of the last few years. I mean, look, the entire back of it is just people showing their admiration for this book. It's Mexican, but it's also been described as Southern Gothic as well. And I read the first 100 pages of it, so that's basically half of it, and I stopped, and I don't know why, so I'm going to come back to it. But at the time I called it one of the greatest things I'd ever read of the 21st century, so you'd think I'd finish it. So I really don't know why, but it's so bleak and violent, and you wouldn't think a woman writer would be able to do something like this. I mean, this is on the level of like Cormac McCarthy type stuff, but she did, and she's fascinating. She's a fascinating writer, brilliant. I love what she's done here. She's been able to incorporate so many interconnecting stories in such a short piece. Brutal gets thrown around a lot, and I've seen some of the reviews, not from critics but rather from readers, who gave it 1 or 2 stars, saying there is no light at the end of this tunnel here. Well, yeah, you should have read the blurb for it then, because yeah, that's not exactly a hopeful book. There is something sinister going on here, something sinister and dark and evil. But I love that sort of stuff, so this is right down my alley. I'm really looking forward to getting into this again. I'm really looking forward to rereading those 100 pages and then finishing the book off. I was very happy the day I found this in this bookstore, because I figured I'd have to buy this online. In fact, the reason I read 100 pages because I bought it on Kindle, because this wasn't showing anywhere. Thankfully, since then, it has shown up in a lot of bookstores in the city. Unfortunately, in the paperback edition, not in this wonderful hardcover edition, which is when it first came out in the first edition issue of the translated version, obviously. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this. Next up is Don DeLillo, White Noise, and I'm going to read this before Noah Baumbach's movie comes out later this year. At the end of last year, a couple of weeks ago, I read Mao 2, and it brought me back into his work. I did find the middle 100 pages to be a little bit faulty, but the start of it, and particularly the end of it, was absolutely brilliant. Sort of like a take on terrorism in a way. So it's got me back into his writing, so I figured I'd read this before the movie comes out. And when I get through White Noise, I'm going to read The Beast, Underworld, his longest book, considered his magnum opus. Whether or not it's considered his best book is another story entirely, because there's quite a few people out there who talk about Libra, the Lee Harvey Oswald book, being the best thing he's ever written. Some would even say The Names, from earlier back in '82. But for the most part, people talk about this one being, the one, the peak, the pinnacle. So I'm looking forward to reading Underworld. And the second big book of this year is Carl Knausgaard's The Morning Star. I haven't read the My Struggle series. I don't know if I will, but I want to read this. I think it sounds fascinating as well. His first foray into fiction, and quite a few people I admire on YouTube talk about how good a book this is. So that's The Morning Star. The book I'm currently reading is, before the movie comes out, Nightmare Alley, William Lindsay Gresham's book, neo-noir type story. My first foray into this sort of style, I haven't read much of that sort of thing. Came out in the 1940s, so of course, being around that time, you'd think it was a neo-noir. So I'm about 30 pages into that one there. I don't know what to make of it yet, so look forward to it. But it is about carnival sort of stuff, which transitions into the second book I read this year, which is Geek Love, a sick, twisted, dilapidated piece of wonderfulness. Very well written, Geek Love. I actually really liked it. Unfortunately, where I thought it should have ended, it continues from there. There's like 3 chapters to go after the big ending, and I thought that deprived it a little bit. It sort of just it sent you off on a bit of a low rather than a high. But everything leading up to that ending is absolutely wonderful. It builds and builds and builds, and the short stories inside of it that lead to the connection of the families is absolutely fascinating, including one character referred to as the Bagman. And I'll talk to more in that review. I'm going to give a video review of this and the next book, my last book of the 26th, the first book I read this year, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now I'm going to do a video on this tomorrow, but what I'm going to say is this. Do not go into this, or do not read this purely because you think it's just a pure 100% novelization of the movie. It's not. I'd say about 50% of what happens in the movie happens in here. The other 50% of this book, which is about 200 pages, maybe even more, doesn't even happen in the movie. It happens around the movie, so it's like its own separate thing that adds on to the movie. Things that happen in between scenes in the movie, and years before that, and even years after that. And those were some of the best bits of this book. I was pleasantly surprised. In fact, the parts that don't happen in the movie were the best parts about this book. So, yeah, there's that. It was a quick read. I got through it quite quickly, but you know, I'm a fan of his writing style. In terms of being descriptive, it's not the best out there, but he's a guy that deals with dialogue a lot. So when it comes to dialogue, that's where he shines. And boy, is the dialogue in this book good. So that's it. So that is the 26 books I intend on reading this year. Thank you for watching, and if there's any books there that take your mind, then comment below and we'll see how we go. So yeah, all the best, see you.